Alrighty, here we go. Here we go. I'm just gonna record this. Could the U.S. become isolated? And you know what? I just put isolated, but let me go ahead and do it. Be more specific. Economically, it should be, like I say, self-explanatory. But I'll go ahead and do it. There we go. So economically, could the U.S. be isolated economically? Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. I mean, like I say, I've said that to a point. It's hope that Russia and China would create something. And the goddamn cat, the minute I close the door. Hold on, just let it roll. All right. Come on. All right, come on. We're going to do quiet time, okay? It's all right. Okay. As I was saying. So I've heard a lot of this about, like I say, the CIPS, CIPS, and other programs. And of course, we've seen that Saudi Arabia just said, fuck you to the U.S. in terms of turning on the tap for the United States. They said no. The United States, of course, has also reached out to, Venezuela. They've reached out to these different countries and nobody wanted to hear it. What's going on? What's going on, guy? You doing all right? But we've seen a lot of this occur, and I do think that it is a possibility. Even though I did say to a point it was cope, this and that, but I do think it's a possibility. What I will say, though, is what would happen if the U.S. became isolated? What would happen if the U.S. became isolated economically, which I do think is possible? Got kicked off Twitter. Oh, man. Oh, boy. You weren't, like I said, I didn't really see too much that you would get kicked off Twitter for. I really haven't tried to do that much stuff on Twitter. I'll go there and fuck around, but overall, I just read people's takes and move on, There's just so much bullshit, a lot of cope going around, of course. But I think because of what has occurred with, the invasion of Ukraine, I was going to say Ukrainian situation, but that's not polite. We've seen that there is a very real possibility that the U.S. will isolate itself. And that ultimately India, that basically BRICS will align to, so easy to get banned there. I never bothered making one. Yeah, a lot of infighting. Oh, yeah, a lot of it. But I do think there's a real possibility of that, and the United States becoming isolated and just kind of being ignored. I've kind of thought this a little bit, is that I think that's really what people want with multipolarity, is that the United States is just kind of ignored and forgotten, like like somebody who used to be CEO, but has been demoted to being a mailman, a mail boy, I guess, in like a big firm. I really think that's what the U.S. is at this point, is that they're slowly going to become the mail boy of the world. And I do think that's a possibility, that the U.S. will, slowly but surely be forgotten as this imperial power. Like I say, I mean, people can cope and say, oh, America has such a strong economy, or this and that. Like I say, I don't fully believe that. I also don't think the U.S. is as strong as people make it seem. The U.S. is not that strong of a country. It's not the greatest thing ever seen. No, it isn't. Far from it. Far from it. I mean, you could, hell. I mean, I'm not going to be some Anglophile, but I would say the British probably did more as an empire, quote unquote, than the U.S. ever did, I mean, the U.S., I mean, what has the U.S. really accomplished, I mean, yeah, you could say to the moon or whatever, but it's like, for its people, this and that. It's like, yeah, but the thing is, that was done back in the 1950s, creating, the international, or excuse me, the the interstate highway system, or whatever the case may be, for all its negatives that did occur under Eisenhower. But yeah, since the 1950s, what has the United States really done? NASA doesn't really exist as a powerful force anymore. Um, you have, inflation rising. You have infrastructure falling apart. So you see a country that, within becoming an imperial power. Of course, like I say, you can debate about when America became an imperial power, but I'm gonna go ahead and stick with the libs on this and say, the Spanish American War in 1898. So, I mean, in terms of the United States being an imperial power since the Spanish American War, it took less than a century for the US to kind of crumble, I would say. I mean, even by the 1970s, the US was, done, in my opinion, anyway. Like I say, I mean, there are different points where you can say this is when the U.S. really broke, when the Whiskey Rebellion failed, or whichever you want to say. But yeah, it's probably going to become something like a second world country. I still don't think secession will happen anytime soon. But America is falling as a global hegemony for sure. Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And some of this is somewhat cope. Absolutely. Some of this is somewhat cope of what we're talking about. But, the truth is that, yeah, the U.S. will fall into this, as, the Duchy of Burgundy said here, second world country. Yeah, people will praise certain companies or praise certain technologies or whatever, but ultimately, in general, it didn't really happen the same way. You know, um, Now of course, like I said, the UK, you know, the British Empire had years of strife, had years of had decades worth of strife, this and that. Yeah. To answer the question, as long as NYC stands, you can't really isolate it. That's fair. More specifically, I would even say as long as Manhattan stands, because obviously Manhattan, being the biggest and the money making borough is one thing, but yeah, Queens and Brooklyn and all those other places, that's a whole different thing. Of course, Brooklyn hipster, that sort of thing, Staten Island, Long Island, et cetera, et cetera. But yeah. Well, economic issues force the U.S. to leave its spherelings in Latin America and West Europe. I don't see them willingly allowing these places to leave their sphere. Yeah. Yeah. Texas. Yeah. I don't know. Like I say, I do see something like that occurring. The real issue is how many people are going to lose their jobs over the devaluation of the dollar. That's the real issue, isn't it? Now, of course, people have talked about nationalizing crypto, or various different types of cryptos. Maybe who knows what they're going to create their own cryptocurrency. The U.S. will, much as the same way as they're trying to do with China. Who knows how successful that's going to be, but it's going to hurt because yeah, the dollar I think will collapse, and I think that in terms of isolation, in terms of economics, that's definitely going to happen. In terms of the power of the dollar, yeah, basically you need to siege and dismantle the banks or loot them colonialist style. Yeah, yeah. Basically, you're going to have some higher level hackers, but yeah. But yeah, I mean, the United States is going to continue to, just have this maybe elite group of folks who know how to keep the system running, and everyone else is just going to be retarded. Then that's basically where we are at right now. Where Americans really can't read. We're too fat and stupid to really do anything. And now, of course, the gay, right? The gay American empire and all that sort of stuff. You believe that the U.S. states will separate someday? I've promoted that a lot, but I would say someday, possibly. Someday, possibly. I'll put it that way. Possibly. I've promoted a lot, but I think that it's going to have to get much worse. And I think the way that the acceleration of the collapse of the dollar, that may occur sooner than we think. I think the United States is one of those things that is, it just doesn't want to give up that power. And I think that, yeah, they're desperately trying to fight. But I think, obviously, you're not going to get any change with Biden. You're not going to. You're going to have Biden, of course, continuing to promote this sort of thing of, we're not going to get involved in Ukraine. We're not going to do any of this. And of course, blaming, you know, blaming a couple of, blaming Joe Manchin and blaming Kirsten Sinema for not getting Build Back Better done, or blame whomever else they're going to blame, whomever. But eventually, some sort of, whether it's Democrat or Republican, probably more of a Republican. It sounds like, the way that would go. But Republican will have to be like, you know what, fuck you. We're going to start building infrastructure, and this is how we're going to do it. I personally think that's what's going to occur. And of course, like I say, I should say, of course, seeing the issues, specifically, I've tried not to talk too much about the Russian invasion of Ukraine, because I think that's, like I say, plenty of narratives, this and that. But I will say this is we've seen, of course, Mariupol has been surrounded, and it's going to be a version of Stalingrad, depending on what sort of, or the Battle of Berlin, however way you want to say it. And it's going to get nasty. All sorts of narratives. I'm going to be very careful about what I say, but just to say, I'll leave it at that. Yeah. Canada will stick with America to the bitter end. Yeah. Oh, yeah. No, I have no doubt. Yo, Biden prices are growing. Yeah. And Dems, Ukraine. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. That's really what it is, too. There's going to be so much propaganda, during these midterms here. There's going to be so much shit that comes out. Oh my goodness. It's going to come up. So many folks are going to be talking about Ukraine and, finding some way to motivate people, this and that. But I think, like I say, everything has shifted so much. And like I say, the terms have been shifted so much that we've misused terms so much that nobody knows what these terms mean. In general, I think here's a big cope. I wanted to find a way. I'm just going to put my ham fist right through it and just do it. But I get so tired of these emails where just like, well, it's true what happened with NATO, this and that. It's like, I can agree with you on that, but it's like, well, Putin is still bad for what he did. And it's just like, oh boy, and it's just like, they don't want to talk. It's like, I'm going to say this, is that a lot of MLs feel like everything post 1953 is revisionism. And it's just the sort of thing of, we don't want to talk about what occurred with Khrushchev or Brezhnev. We don't want to talk about that because that's, that just wasn't good. And it's really, like I say, and of course they won't mention that the Soviet Union supported white supremacists, and in the United States wanted to, have a civil war, a race war, this and that. They don't want to talk about that, but it is what it is. I think in general, of course, we've seen how, normies, have become, dare I say it, but I'm going to make it, sort of fake radicalized by this. What do I mean by fake radicalization? It means they've been radicalized by the powers that be. Their establishment radicalized, right? Where it's just like they're so focused on, Russia and Putin, this and that, and they don't want to look at anything else. But yeah, the way they don't want to talk about left-wing Axis collaborators and World War II either. Oh no, absolutely not. I hear, like I say, I listened to that Hakeem on that Deprogram podcast, and he said that Yugoslavia won all by itself. And I was like, what? What? Yugoslavia, I'm sorry, Tito's partisans won the Second World War all by themselves. I'm like, oh, really? The British never helped them. I apparently. And I'm like, oh, really? I'm just like, wow. I'm just like, oh my goodness. But these are the types of folks that claim that they are going to start a revolution. But you've seen We've seen, of course, all the pitiful, absolutely, yeah, gay king. Yeah, exactly. I mean, you see all these pitiful, excuses, these impotent political groups and political parties that have tried to, had some sort of take on these things, and it's all bullshit. The fact is that things are not going to be done through party apparatus, at least in the near future. I think it's going to be done by eventually the groups will come about, I think, but they'll all be kind of promising the same sort of thing. It's just how are they going to do it, and what their real motivations are, right? Like I say, I mean, you see so much of this bullshit go on, and you just become further and further disengaged. You know, yeah. Will you vote in 2024? I probably will. I probably will. I'll probably keep it to myself because, but as an American, like I said, I want to be able to complain and bitch about politics. So if I participate in it, I can at least give a reason why, right? I mean, that's sort of the normie boomer answer, right? It's just like, you know, why do you complain about politics? I didn't vote, or whatever. It's like, but so at least I can bitch and whine, and then I can say I did vote, so fuck you. But yeah, we see, of course, all this bullshit go on. I'm sorry, I'm just repeating myself at this point, but all these folks, yeah, I realize that alternative ideology people have nothing to offer normal people. ML, that's like three positions. They're stuck in the status quo. Oh, really? Oh, absolutely. Yeah, they do. Everybody's stuck in this whole sort of thing. I mean, these various groups, I saw this bullshit. I mean, I've seen a few bullshit videos. Don't get me wrong, of course. Bo the fifth column, but that's standard. Like I say, I know he's full of shit. I saw, of course, that second thought guy. Apparently JD, who actually lives in the great state of Texas, probably down in Austin. He doesn't live in the real Texas, up where I am. He doesn't live in places like, Vernon, Texas, or, you know, Burke Burnett. But he doesn't want to fuck with that, you know. He's probably down there in Austin, like I say. Well, that's a whole different thing, you know. And he was talking about, of course, at the end, of course, he's like, no war but the class war. It's just like, give me a fucking break. Give me a fucking break with your no war but class war bullshit. It's like, get the fuck out of here. It's never worked that way. Yeah. Austin is barely Texas. Yeah. Oh, I agree. It is. It's barely Texas. Austin is just something that, oof. I've driven in the I've been to like maybe the outskirts of Austin, but I've never been to Austin proper. But I imagine it's just shit. It's the same type of thing with Houston. I mean, Houston at least is somewhat more Texan, I think, in some ways. But yeah, Austin, forget about it. Dallas, Fort Worth. I mean, those are places that's just like, oh my goodness, Lord have mercy. But yeah, those, like I say, a lot of shit is going to come out of DFW. A lot of shit's going to happen in, like I say, Dallas, Fort Worth. I mean, that's all one big thing to smaller Texas guys like me. It's just like DFW. It's all one thing. Dallas, Fort Worth. It doesn't matter whether you live in Paris, Texas, or you live in, Fort Worth, or you live in, I don't know, Grapevine. It's all DFW. It's all DFW to us. And like I say, maybe that's more of a boomer point of view or whatever, but I mean, if we're gonna get into Texas shit, that's what I say. It's all boomer shit. Yeah, class war is a false economy. They'll inevitably side with people they don't like due to lack of experience from the revolutionaries. Oh, absolutely, absolutely. It's all bullshit. There's so many folks who promote this bullshit. It's all nonsense. It's all ridiculous. But yeah, Texas is what it is, of course. Yeah, no war but class war. Sino Soviet split, China Vietnam War. Exactly. Exactly. How's it going? How are you doing, sir? 21st century longest. You doing all right? I decided to, do a little stream here. I know the untried path. I know that he's going to be streaming later. The thing is I've just had a cold and now my voice is somewhat back to normal. So, shout out to Zinc though, by the way. If you can catch your cold early and just zinc max, just take as much zinc as you can. Oh my goodness, it does so much better for your body. Oh boy, especially as you get older. I'm sorry. When you get older, it's just day and day and day. Like I say, you can go on for like 2 weeks with a damn cold. I tell you. Anywho, that's just me getting old. But we see, all this sort of stuff happen. God damn, I'm repeating myself. I'm sorry, but Texas, 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 Texas. You know, we've seen, of course, like I say, I think Governor Abbott did win. Governor Abbott, I think that he won landslide. Landslide, I want to say. I'm pretty sure. Yeah, announces Sovereign Flavors Beverage Company relocating to Texas. Sovereign Flavors Abbott cites. Oh my gosh. Okay, hold on. Let's read this bullshit while we're talking about Texas, but it also involves a larger Ukraine Russia issue. Here we go. Let's read it. Let's read it. Here we go. Dallas Morning News. As Abbott cites O'Rourke's pro Russia vote in Congress, Democrat compares Texas governor to Putin. Holy shit. Here we go. See, it's our, like I said, here we go. This is a perfect example of just politics of the day, right? And it's just like Governor Greg Abbott said Beto O'Rourke is soft on Russia and so green, he's helped get Ukraine hooked on Russian energy. O'Rourke says Abbott, just like Vladimir Putin, has oligarch pals and is crushing democracy. Just two fags fighting. I'm sorry, this is just two fags fighting. But here we go. So this is March 21st. This is today. Governor Greg Abbott is dredging up Beto O'Rourke's votes on Ukraine as a freshman congressman 8 years ago to cast Democrat as pro-Russia. Also citing O'Rourke's 2015 vote against a bill that would have made it easier to export liquefied natural gas, and his support 2 years ago for then presidential candidate Joe Biden. Abbott's campaign is labeling O'Rourke as an enemy of Texas's oil and gas industry, yada, yada, yada. We're going to skip down here. The governor even has his own oligarch, the former El Paso congressman said. O'Rourke was referring to Abbott supporter and Dallas energy pipeline magnate Kelsey Warren. Warren has sued O'Rourke for defamation, blah, blah, blah. $1 million political contribution. The Russian invasion of Ukraine may seem a world away, but the war and its implications are being felt across America, including Texas, where the two major party gubernatorial candidates are talking or being forced to talk about it. As it goes, everyone's, like I say, everyone has to pledge their loyalty to the United States, Slava Ukraini, and all that. Like I said, feels like I say, we're not going to get into specifics. Okay. Conflict in Europe is going to be a pretty tangential issue in the governor's race. Southern Methodist University political science professor Matthew Wilson. The only thing that it does highlight is the respective candidates' judgment. They can talk about past and current positions with regard to Russia as indicators of their own and their opponent's political institution and values and judgment. Speaks volumes. Abbott is pressing the issue 2 days after Russian forces swept into Ukraine. The governor asked all Texas retailers, package stores, and restaurateurs to voluntarily stop selling Russian products. Texas stands with Ukraine. Oh, jeez. Huh? Oh, Lord. Obviously toothless, but it sent a signal that this is something, virtue signaling, he's hoping to capitalize on, Rottinghouse said, whoever the hell that guy is. The following week, a day after Abbott dispatched seven fellow Republicans to win outright his party's nomination for a third term, Dave Carney, his top political strategist, said Ukraine will be an issue in the fall contest. He cited O'Rourke's U.S. House votes U.S. House votes in the aftermath of Russia's February 2014 invasion of Crimea. Sorry. In late March of that year, blah, blah, blah. Oh my goodness. Yeah, our laws have been pretty based lately. Yeah. I'll say this, without the Western world and the Cold War, all these socialist states would be constantly warring between one another. Oh, absolutely. That is true too. Yeah. I'm gonna go ahead and drop the link for y'all. There's no I don't see any I just clicked on this myself. So there's no paywall, but I'll go ahead and drop this in just in case y'all want to read this on your own. I'm not gonna read every single word, but there you go. That's the Dallas Morning News. So I'll read a little bit more of this and then we'll may wrap this up. But let's see here. Carney conflated O'Rourke's votes with outright support for Russian aggression. Don't care, blah, blah, blah. Online publications sought Islamic militants, Daily Beast. Okay. Some real parallels. O'Rourke said he fully supports Ukraine in the current conflict. Citing a need for national unity, though, he said now is the wrong time to discuss his past criticisms of U.S. foreign policy. I, like I hope everyone in Texas, fully back the people of Ukraine who are fighting against extraordinarily long odds and so far are prevailing against Russia, O'Rourke said at an Austin News conference. I support our president and making sure that this country does everything it can, including convening our partners within our alliances in NATO to give Ukraine and President Zelensky the support they need to be able to hold these invaders at bay. Blah, blah, blah. I'm getting bored of this. I'm sorry, folks. Let's see here. Laredo banker Tony Sanchez on a border top at Rittenhouse. Blah, 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 blah. Okay. Oh, it's bullshit. Okay, sorry. I was just reading this, just looking bored as fuck. I'm sorry, folks. But yeah, and this is, like I said, this is going to be a reflection of plenty of races that will occur. This will obviously may even occur in 2024, depending on how things go, next year. But plenty of folks are still talking about, are going to be continuing to bring up Ukraine and Russia and saying, and of course, the whole narrative is going to be that the GOP supports Russia. They support Putin. Putin helped get Trump elected, all this sort of thing, and of course, and it goes to show just how petty America is, of course, and just how nobody's going to really talk about the issues. Everyone's going to be talking about Ukraine and supporting of that and the whole narrative that exists. And of course, like I say, of course, everyone's going to be like, well, of course we support the people of Ukraine, this and that. And of course, like I say, it's all glib. It's all sort of, pretending to give a shit sort of stuff. But let's hook it back around. And let's go ahead and wrap this taco up here. Or let's wrap this burrito of a video up. And say this is, I think the U.S. could become isolated economically. But I think that depending on, how hard that foot in that kick in the ass the U.S. is going to have to get. Once that kick in the ass does occur, I think that the U.S. will find a way to, continue to have some sort of platform. That's not to say that the U.S. is going to continue to be. I'm just going to go ahead and use this term. I'm going to use it the one time. I try to use the N-word less, but the HNIC. The U.S. will no longer be the HNIC, which, for those that don't know, HNIC means head nigga in charge. The U.S. will no longer be the head nigga in charge as things go along. But I think that they're going to find a place at the table. I'm going to put it that way. The U.S. will continue to find a way to sit at the table and to say, you know what? We still got a little bit of fight left in us. That's my view of it. Maybe I was coping earlier, but I do think that Russia, that BRICS will be a strong contender. How big of a contender? That's a matter of opinion. But I think I said before, maybe saying that it was somewhat coped that Russia and India will be working together. But I do think that they're going to be a contender. I do think they're going to be a contender. As the same way that they laid, I'm trying to think of his name now. I could have been in Contender. But yeah. They'll sell weapons probably. Oh, absolutely. Like I said, the U.S. will find a way. Yeah. America so desperately needs self-reflection, but it's near impossible to do so because we're so full of ourselves. Absolutely, yeah. China's going to win all odds. Oh, yeah. I don't disagree, yeah. I do think China will win. Like I said, I think that China, of course, is playing a very careful strategy. Continuing to. China, of course, is, just doing the smarter roles, whether it's when the Israel-Palestine situation, conflict, the continuing one, where, China will, of course, claim, Palestinians are good, but then will also support, Israel and sell them trains. It's like I say, but then also trying to get support from Iran. Like I say, imagine India as a new superpower. I mean, that was a meme for a good long time, superpower India 2023 or something like that, or 2024. It may be, but I don't know. I'm going to be very careful about those phrases. So we'll see. We'll see what happens with this new quote unquote. I mean, I don't like to use this term because so many people misuse it, and I probably will misuse it here, but this quote unquote multipolar world and whatever that means. The thing is, multipolar, I mean, it's a misnomer, really. It's that, the way it works nowadays is that everybody's is so independent of others. So, yeah. And it's such a ridiculous thing. But anyway, I think that's all I really have to say. Check out my guy. Yeah, I'm hearing that there are countries who might surpass the BRICS. Oh, really? Okay. Okay. The reaction Ukraine, yeah. The reaction to the Ukraine-Russia war was pretty much removed most of my predictions about America collapsing in the foreseeable future. Yeah. Mine as well. I think a lot of folks are starting to realize it's like the U.S. and I'm going to go ahead and use some other. I do use this term here and there, but I'll use it here. The Atlanticists, the U.K., the U.S., and Europe are not out of the game yet. They're not, like I say, they haven't bowed out yet. And the propaganda power is very strong. It's very strong. Like I say, that propaganda game is, Trump tight. Dare I put it that way? And of course, that refers more to like the early 90s sort of Trump type, not today's, but propaganda game strong. And actual, boots on the ground power is still somewhat there. I'll put it that way. But yeah, it's like I say, the U.S., just as I said before, don't count anybody out. I'm not going to count Russia out. I'm sure as hell not going to count China out. I'm not going to count even the U.S. as much as we all criticize the U.S. We begin to realize now that the U.S. is not going to just back down, But yeah, I think that's all I really have to say. I could go on and on and on, but it's just going to be me repeating myself and just continuing to use these phrases so I don't, just wait for something to say that's somewhat interesting. Anyway, I think I'll go ahead and wrap it up here, wrap this burrito of a video up. Hopefully y'all enjoyed that. See you later. A goodbye. Imagine if Moldova. Yeah, there you go. Yeah. Hey, you never know, right? Yeah. God bless you all. Amen to that. God bless. God bless. Inshallah, etc., etc. Bye-bye.